Thank you for joining us today. In this video, professional photographer Hal Brainerd is going to share with you all 3 different kinds of compositions and what instances that you should use them. So, I, myself, when going over the script with him, learned a lot. So we hope that you all will too.
Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm Hal Brainerd and Aaron Ingram is here. Of course, Aaron does all the editing on this for us. When we first got started, I thought it was important to give some instruction to those individuals who are just getting started in photography. And we're going to kind of wrap that up with our composition today, because we really look forward to getting out on excursions and showing you interesting things that we find to shoot. In the video that was on our lenses, we explained how the millimeter of the lens selection affects the image by compressing the subject, making objects appear closer together and more magnified with telephoto lenses, or the opposite is true when we choose a wide-angle lens. Selecting the correct lens is dependent on how we want to compose our image. There are many composition styles, but I would like to demonstrate 3 of the more popular, and I'm going to start with centered composition because I think that's how most photographers probably start shooting, and yet, ironically, in my opinion, this is the most difficult to do correctly. In this winter shot, what I love about this image is that it is obviously centered. But do consider how seldom one would come upon a scene that is so isolated, with no distractions around it. The problem with centering an image is it's easy to have objects that take our attention away from the center. So let's pick a subject a little more complicated with its robin. Here we have Mother Robin and her 3 babies. Yes, the 3rd little beak is sticking up there in the bottom. Notice how the green leaves vignette and center our subject. It's also important to realize that warm colors, light areas, and sharp focus attract our eyes and are important in bringing attention to our subject. And because warm colors attract our eyes, it helps to keep the warm colors more centered. A bright red or yellow near the edge of our photograph could pull our eye out to the outer edges instead of keeping our attention centered. Sharp focus is an important aspect of our composition also. It ensures that our eyes are attracted to the subject. Notice how the focus is very shallow around the birds. The foreground is soft, helping direct our eyes to the birds, and the background is completely gone. So we're not distracted by whatever object could be back there. If I were to criticize this image, oh, I don't want to do that. No, if I was going to criticize this image, it would be the bright light that's shining on the leaves in the upper right portion of the image, particularly the top right. Light areas in the image do attract our eyes, and hence, in this image, our eye could be drawn to the top right edge, taking our attention away from our subject. So composition can be tricky when you combine the composition itself with the sharp focus and the warm colors and the highlighted areas. This next portrait is certainly centered. The reds are so dominant, they vignette our image and are darker than her face, which is the lightest area to attract our eyes. Had the red only been in one small area along the side, it could be pulling us away from our center. I also like how the wood planks direct our eyes down towards the subject. Her dark blue dress ensures our eyes stay focused on the light area of her face and hands. This large industrial solar panel was shot with a wide-angle 24mm lens, making the panels appear swollen in the center and with more detail. This helps attract our eyes to the center. Again, I wish the sunrise was not creating the bright area on the horizon, but thankfully it's very small in the composition to the entire image. It does remind us that perfection, considering all the aspects of composition, is tricky with so many choices. Now this fox, the focus is quite interesting. Notice the background and the green leaves on his side and neck are out of focus. The 200mm lens with a large physical aperture provides a very narrow depth of field, making him stand out in the portrait. As we can see, shallow focusing is great for removing objects of no importance that could take away from our subject. The second composition style I would like to discuss is diagonal. Your subject will run diagonally from one corner of your image to the other. This young lady is a good example. Notice her body runs from the top left to the bottom right, diagonally across the image. Often in a portrait you will find the nose perfectly centered. But with all portraits, the eyes are the most important area which will capture our attention. With its coal tipple, we can see how the coal chute runs from the lower left corner towards the upper right. A little more elevation and it would be ideal. At this time of day, the moon would be very bright and overexposed when our image on the ground is properly exposed. So I exposed a second image just for the moon and dropped it in over this image. There's really no other way to do this, because again, that moon is going to be extremely overexposed at this time of day. It's extremely bright when you're taking a nighttime picture. In John Kennedy's gravesite, the diagonal is a little more centered in the foreground before heading up to the right center. I feel the highlight on his stone attracts our eyes first, before the diagonal carries our eyes up to the warm flame on the outer edge. The warm color near the edge works because it is the only color in the image, and being an important part of the image, the warm flame holds our attention due to the diagonal composition. In this image, our eyes are attracted to the lightest area of the whitewater before running diagonally up to the upper right. Because the highlights in the whitewater attract our eyes, it can be important not to let it run off the edge of the image, which could direct our eyes off to the side of the photograph. Here again, the darker background of green and brown helps to focus our eyes on the lightest part of the stream. One of the most important compositions is called the rule of thirds. Think of a tic-tac-toe board with equal lines making 9 squares. The most important area of your image would be where the lines intersect at the 4 juncture points. You want your eyes to enter the image and roll around from one intersection of lines to another without being drawn out of the image. The 4 lines are also important areas where objects should line up along the lines and help carry your eyes to the juncture points. We will start with its rustic old wagon. We try to line up areas of importance along or close to these lines with a major importance at the lines of intersection. The barn runs along the upper horizon line. The wagon runs along the lower horizontal line. The back wheel is touching the lower right intersection of lines. The front wheel is close to the lower left intersection, and the tree trunk is close to the vertical right line. The wagon could also be considered a diagonal composition running from the lower right corner to the upper left corner. Often you will find other rules of composition blending in with the rule of thirds. And another example of that would be the robin that we just looked at. This is an example where, although it's very centered, it also is a good composition for the rule of thirds. In this grits mill image, the upper horizontal line contains the mill intersecting close to the right vertical line. Also along this vertical line is a small waterfall and the mill's reflection. The bottom horizontal line runs through rocks, forming a line near the bottom with a major boulder intersection on the left vertical line and bottom horizontal line. Had the waterfall on the left fallen through the left vertical line, it would have made a better image. Notice how the light area of the waterfall on the left brings your eye a little too far towards the outside of the image. In the sunrise at Rehoboth Beach, the upper horizontal line runs along the horizon, and the sun is close to the juncture of the upper horizontal line and the left vertical line. A major fence post stands near the right vertical line. This beautiful young lady could be centered composition. Once again, the nose is very close to center, but when we look at the rule of thirds, we find her eyes are near both upper line intersections. The mouth runs along the lower horizontal line, and the cheeks run along the vertical lines. In this coal industrial shot, again, the men are centered. But when we look at the rule of thirds, the top of the equipment and the men's heads run along the upper horizontal line. The bottom of the brightly colored equipment is running along the lower horizontal line, and the men fall close to being inside or on the vertical lines. Last but not least is this peaceful hammock. Notice how the top horizontal line runs along the horizon. When shooting a landscape, this would be typical unless you're capturing more of the sky. Then the bottom line would run along the horizon. The sun, which is a prominent part of this image, is almost on the upper left line juncture, and the bottom horizon line is running along the bottom of the clouds. Now, I hope this gives you some ideas of how to compose strong images, and remember, it's okay to combine compositions, but it also helps if you understand why it works that way.
Hal and I hope that these first few videos have been encouraging and helpful to those of you who are just starting out. We want to encourage you to pursue your photography dreams. Our future videos will focus more on excursions we will take pursuing our love of photography out there in the landscape. Now, our next video we will look forward to sharing with you is an exciting cave lighting excursion, so be sure to tune in for that. Thank you for joining us, and we'll hope to see you next Tuesday. Be sure to subscribe, share, and thank you. Bye-bye.